On every episode of MCTV, I always look for the strange and unusual when it comes to motorcycling, and today's show is no different. Take for instance this motorcyclist. Now he looks like any other motorcycle rider, but this is Gary Rothwell, and he's just a little different. See, Gary doesn't exactly ride a motorcycle as much as he dances with it. And to watch Gary perform, well, it's kind of like watching Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers. Except now, beautiful Ginger, she's been exchanged for a 115 horsepower tire churning motorcycle. And I guarantee you, after you watch Gary perform, you'll never quite think of motorcycle riding the same again. Our story today is about a motorcycle racer who I first met outside of San Francisco, California in the summer of '98 at a racetrack called Sears Point. And when I first heard about her, this woman racer in the 125 division, thought it had to be some sort of joke, or at best just some woman who wanted to raise some eyebrows or turn some heads, but not really compete. I mean, we're talking 125 two-stroke Grand Prix machines here. Top speeds, 130 miles an hour. Turn on a dime and weigh in at only around 160 pounds. You can't expect a woman to compete out there, can you? I mean, we're talking fender scraping, knee dragging, bike crashing racing, where you never know until the last turn on the last lap who's going to take the checkered flag. And everyone's gunning for number one. It's like a Wild West showdown out there. If someone's in your way and you can't get through, then you literally have to push them out of the way, all the time doing speeds of well over 100 miles an hour, and all the time the clock's ticking. Now you can't think that a fragile little girl could do that, could you? Well, after this video, you may never think about women motorcycle racers quite the same way again. Our story begins a week before one of the biggest race events of the year, where the world's best mechanics, race teams, and riders will descend on a racetrack just outside of Monterey, California called Laguna Seca. There they'll battle for 100th of a second, and if you're lucky enough to get a chance to stand on the podium, then you'll not only be representing your race team, but you'll be representing your country as well. One last thing. In the 125 division, there'll be 45 riders who will qualify to race here. Only one of them will be a female. I sent my entire crew first class down to Southern California to see how the Jacksonville race team was preparing for the biggest race of the year. I began by interviewing the chief mechanic, the team manager, and the husband to see how things were going. Oh, that's right, they're the same person. This is Tony Bell, one of the luckiest guys you'll ever meet, and also someone who knows a lot about how to keep a racing motorcycle running consistently fast so that the rider, his wife, will be ready to race and ready to win come race day.
I look back first on my notes, because I have notes right from the first day that we started racing. I look back on my notes as to when we first started racing compared to now. I didn't really have any idea what I was doing at all. I wasn't very good. I'm not saying I'm good now, but I'm a lot better than I was then.
So you take a lot of notes, does that help?
You've got to have notes, yeah. You've got to have every change you make on a motorcycle, from tire pressure to carburation, suspension, everything you've got to do, because if it makes a change and it's a negative change, you've got to be able to go back to where you were, and you can't remember. And also, if you go to one track and it works well, if you go back a year later, you can't remember, so you've got to have notes. So we work off a sheet that we have probably 50 or 60 lines there, 50, 60 categories of information that we put into the to record.
Such as?
Starts with something simple as time of day, the date, the track, the elevation, and then you go things like humidity, dry temperature, wet temperature, what type of carburetor you're using, what slide, what needle, what power jet, what the air screw setting is at. That's just part of it. Then you get into suspension, compression, rebound, ride height, everything. We even record how many laps we do on every tire. Every time we go out, we record the heat cycles. There's a huge amount of stuff that goes into it. Like me, anybody who tunes motorcycles and you want to be successful, you've got to keep a record. You have to give a record of where we were, because the rider can come back and say, well, yesterday it was better. Where were we yesterday at this time? What was, it's not as good as it was, and I can look at my notes and I can find out why, what the changes we've made. We've put some time in testing at Laguna Seca, but we haven't had anybody to really compare against. And I think there's one or two people going to go a bit quicker than us in qualifying. If Vicky can hook up with them, that'll be sufficient to get us a tow, to get us on the front row. The only concern I have is that there's 47 riders going to try and qualify. So after about 4 laps, the track is going to be littered with riders, and getting a fast lap in after that is going to be very difficult.
Here's a funny statistic. It seems that every motorcycle and sidecar racer that I've ever interviewed all agree that racing on a racetrack is less dangerous than driving on public streets.